McLaren have gone through a significant amount of change over the last few years in Formula One. The team that was led by Ron Dennis has changed, and since then, both on and off track, the team have gone through significant rebuilds. In 2021 though, you may have noticed the fact that the team's sponsors on their car changed at almost every single race. So why was this the case? Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. The key changes. The last time that McLaren had a title sponsor in Formula One was all the way back in 2013, when Vodafone took that position. Since then, there have been a number of significant changes in the McLaren leadership team through a period of turmoil. Perhaps the most notable change was the introduction of Zak Brown in 2016, and his subsequent position change in 2018, making him the team's CEO. In this position, Brown is responsible for business strategy, business operation, and most importantly, marketing and commercial development. So, with Brown in a position where he has control over the marketing, and with continued improvements in the team's performance on track, the team's sponsorship portfolio has grown as a result. Zak Brown has been quoted as saying that the sponsorship industry within Formula One is changing. At a recent roundtable with different media outlets, he was saying that the McLaren team has a dedicated young following as a result of their driver lineup, which includes two popular and likeable characters in Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. And this setup, combined with the actions of Formula One in recent times, including the introduction of Drive to Survive, has resulted in a new demographic for the sport, and as such, the sponsorship models appear to be changing as well. Within this interview, Brown discussed the fact that whilst he isn't against having a title sponsor, he enjoys not having all his eggs in one basket. And as such, the McLaren team has a large number of sponsors. Their website currently lists 44 different organisations as the F1 team's partners. Alongside this, the team does have a set sponsor for their rear wing top element in cyber AI company Darktrace, and also a set side pod sponsor, A Better Tomorrow, otherwise known as British American Tobacco. But as I'll mention shortly, the side pod sponsor did differ based on geography throughout the 2021 season. So the key elements of the McLaren F1 car do have season-long sponsors, and not having a title sponsor on board also gave them the creative freedoms to not only maintain their brand colour, but also run fun liveries, such as the Golf livery that they had in Monaco and the colourful Views livery that they ran in Abu Dhabi. Having a title sponsor may have meant that they'd have had to give up on some of these freedoms. Before I take a look at the sponsor changes from race to race though, I want to take a moment to ask you to consider subscribing to Behind the Drive. I've got loads more videos to come through the 2022 season, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on to be the first to know whenever I upload. Thanks. So did the sponsors really change that much? I've already talked about the fact that the team have multiple different sponsors and partners, and the fact that they do have some recurring partners that can be seen on a regular basis through the season. But in the sections that did change, how often did they change? And is this normal? There were certainly some key sponsor elements that changed on a regular basis. For the purposes of this video, I've focused on three key parts of the car: the rear wing underside, or the bit that you can see from the back of the car, the main side pod area, which has a recurring sponsor in British American Tobacco, and then the engine cover sponsor spot as well. The reason I've picked these three is mainly due to the availability of images that I had access to, so could check the differences from race to race, although there were certainly other changes across the rest of the car. To start, in the rear wing underside, there was a primary sponsor for the majority of the first half of the season. Huski Chocolate had that spot at the opening 13 rounds, with Huski Wear having the spot for the next 3 rounds between Italy and Turkey. So in reality, that's 16 of the 22 rounds with the same partner. But at the following round in the USA, Huski Chocolate moved into a position just between the bottom of the halo and above the driver number. This is an interesting development for me, as that part of the car is far less prominent than the rear wing, so this could either be a sign of either the partner not being able to pay for that premium space at the back, or the team having alternative and potentially more lucrative offers for that area. Either way, the partnership on the face of it appears to remain between McLaren and Huski Chocolate, but this doesn't look like a change driven by geography, which some of the other changes we'll discuss later certainly have been. As for the rest of the season, a further 5 different sponsors took that rear wing underside element at different races for the rest of the year, including Cisco, DeWalt, Party Poker, Data Robot, and even a plug for the new McLaren hybrid road car, the Artura. So it seems like this was a spot on the car that ended up perhaps going to the highest bidder. Moving on to the side pod now, and this element of the car has a primary sponsor in A Better Tomorrow. However, through this season, they did opt for different brands and products to be shown as Formula One went into different countries. And this is entirely normal when it comes to different advertising laws in each of the host nations. Over this season, they displayed 4 different logos here, which were Velo on 7 occasions, Views on 6 occasions, A Better Tomorrow once, and then at the Austrian Grand Prix, they had Tomorrowland on the side of the car, as a part of the brand's goal to support the media and entertainment industry. But there are a number of other countries where tobacco or vaping advertising is prohibited, so at these races there were alternative logos on the side of the car, including Auto Grill on 3 occasions, Oxo on 2 occasions, and then Rappi was shown at the race in Brazil. It's interesting to see the difference in approach from Ferrari, who when unable to advertise Mission Winnow would simply remove that awful green logo entirely, but McLaren would find an alternative. So the side pod had different advertisers through the year, but this was primarily driven by geographical locations and local advertising law based on my very high level research. The third and final point that I looked at was on the engine cover. Early on in this season, this element of the car was not used for advertising. It was first used at the Monaco Grand Prix in the special Golf livery edition, which had the Views logo in this spot. It was later used to host advertising space for 8 different partners, all of which I believe had been seen in different parts of the car before. But this spot changed at nearly every Grand Prix, and there was no 2 races in a row where the same sponsor was in this location. So this is a particularly interesting one, as it's a part of the car that didn't have any sponsors early on, but it became an area that was used on a regular basis by the end of the year. Going back to that interview I mentioned earlier on with Zak Brown, he said he didn't want the car to turn into a patch of logos or a quilt of logos, which is something that the McLaren car has looked like at times in the last few years. But with 44 partners on board, it's almost to be expected that this would be the case. It's very normal for F1 cars to look different from race to race, but certainly in my opinion and from a few comments I've seen, it seems like the perceptions have been that the McLaren car's livery and sponsors changed more than most in 2021. But I suppose the question is whether this is a good or a bad thing. Is this good for McLaren? So we've seen some of the changes through the 2021 season on the McLaren car, but the question is whether it was good for the team. For me, I can completely see the point of Zak Brown when he says that he doesn't want to have all of his eggs in one basket. Look at Williams, for example. Once they lost their title sponsor Martini at the end of 2018, they struggled for money and ended up needing to be bought out by a private equity firm. This was partly due to their poor performances, but seemingly a dependence on a title sponsor can result in financial risk for a Formula One team. So this alternative of having multiple partners that are keen to be on the McLaren car and can also offer support to the team in different areas seems to be a good option for them at the moment from a financial perspective. Now of course I can't know this for sure, but based on Brown's comments, it certainly seems like he's comfortable with their position in the sponsorship market and the fact that they haven't had a title sponsor since 2013. The changes to the sponsorship market as well have to be brought up here. Being able to have different brands that are perhaps looking to come into Formula One sponsorship for the first time to take advantage of the changing demographics is definitely something that McLaren seem to be considering and offering here. They certainly have one of the best driver lineups when it comes to marketing in my view, as they have 2 likeable and talented drivers. Overall then, in my opinion, this is the model that McLaren have planned for and one that they seem pretty comfortable with. Other teams that have title sponsors could be at risk should they pull out. And those teams with title sponsors don't necessarily have the opportunity to take advantage of short-term contracts like McLaren have done in recent times. But to make this a success, I think it's important to highlight the fact that McLaren was one of the best performers in 2021. If they were to drop back in this new era, this model may become a challenge. Now of course, I can only speculate. I don't know the financials behind these deals, and I don't know whether it would be better for them to have a title sponsor, but looking at the differences on the car from race to race and the comments from the team boss, it looks like it's part of the plan.